This week on The Chef's Cut, farmers market season is at its early peak, and we are going to tell you what questions to ask your farmer to make the most out of it. What are you excited about today? Farmers love that question. We'll talk about the new technology people are using to enhance the guest experience.
You see some places that have just don't answer the phone at all anymore.
And a helpful lesson about how not to cut those fresh vegetables you get at the market. That knife dislodged from the cabbage and lodged into the back of my hand. But first, Chef's Cut Nation, you know what time it is. We need 10 seconds of your day. Please rate and review wherever you get your pods, because Joe and I are hitting the summer and this really helps. So we've talked about farmers market on the pod, and a lot of people were really excited because a lot of people who aren't chefs don't realize that the best produce and the best things that you're going to learn, you're going to find out by talking to the people at that stand. Yes, you want to look around and something at that stand is going to draw you in, but let's kind of decode farmers markets for people who don't work in the industry and who want to get to know, like, don't be intimidated to talk to your farmer. What is some advice that you would give somebody going to a farmer's market who isn't a chef and doesn't have a relationship with a farmer? What would you tell them to look for? And what's a good way to get a conversation started with a farmer?
Yeah, I think it's building that relationship with that farm stand that you go to. You know what I mean? I go to the same ones all the time, so I talk to them all the time and say hi. Like, if there's new people there, I introduce myself and just ask them, be like, oh, what's good? You know what I mean? Ask them what's good. What's, what are you liking today? And it's, whether it's, they have a bunch of varietals of apples or melons or greens or whatever. Or, if it's something you don't know, not being afraid to be like, hey, what is this? And then asking, like, what do you do with this? What are chefs doing with this? I have people who talk to me at the farmer's market all the time, where they're like, they'll see me, grabbing something. They're like, oh, what are you going to do with that? And I'm like, and I love talking to them about it. I'm like an old man in like a hardware store. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, you want to talk about cauliflower? Like, and like, we'll talk to them for 30 minutes about it. And they're like, I regret asking any of these questions to this guy. But I think like that's the biggest thing, is like having those conversations. And I think like the other thing, as like chefs in, in restaurants or in, doing private work or whatever you're doing when we're planning a dinner, we kind of go into it with half a plan of like, all right, this is what I'm looking for, right? Of like, I'm cooking for 10 people, or I'm trying to put a dish on that is like XYZ. So we have an idea going of like, I need some things like this. And so I think for like the average person, if you have an idea a little bit of what you're looking for, then it gives you a baseline. And then if you can go from there and say, okay, well, if they're out of English peas and I really wanted to make a mint and English pea pasta, right? Then having that conversation with the farmer and say, hey, I was going to make this. You don't have this, what do you have?
Right.
And, like, what do they have that's a great vegetable, right? Or they're like, oh, hey, listen, this Italian black cal is super beautiful right now. You could put that into a pasta. It'd be really, really good. So I think going in with an idea so that when you're buying stuff, because there's nothing more frustrating too than buying stuff and then it's like it sits in the fridge and dies, right?
Right.
So like having a plan for that stuff before you take it off that table.
Yeah, that's really good advice, because I've definitely brought stuff and I'm like, oh my God, I don't have an outlet to use this. Am I just going to snack on said vegetable? Yes, that's a possibility, but it'll sit in the fridge for a few days. And then I'm like, okay, I just have to figure it out before it's past its prime and I have to throw it away. And just like you said before, there is a worse chef question to ask, which we all know now from our previous episode, but there is a best farmer question to ask. And you nailed it. What are you excited about right now? What are you excited about today? Farmers love that question. They love it because there's always something they're excited about.
Yeah, there's always something they've been snacking on all morning. Look at their table and what they're snacking on, and you're like, oh, that's what I want. You know what I mean? If these guys are just sitting here eating a certain type of apple, I'm like, that's probably the apple I want.
Yeah.
Right?
You got honey saps over there? Okay, cool. I want one. I want what you're eating.
But I think that's also what makes it tricky. Like sometimes when you do, I don't know if you've ever done the CSA boxes.
I have not, but I have friends who do.
So I had never done one until like during COVID. Because there's, they did all those boxes, like a lot of purveyors and a lot of farmers, where it's like you could get meat boxes and you could get, vegetable boxes. So I did a CSA for like a full year, which I'd never done. I was always curious about it, but I was never, when we're working in restaurants, you're not home enough to do it, right? And, it's like, and you're not cooking for enough people to do it. But even for me to get through the full box of vegetables sometimes, like felt like a task. Like it was like, okay, and then it's like you run into those like 3 beets. And you're like, shit, I gotta roast beets right now. I'm gonna like roast and peel beets like on a Tuesday
Right.
night. And if like I'm feeling that way, I can't imagine people who it's like haven't roasted a trillion beets in their life.
Right.
Looking at
It's a big chore.
Right, looking at that like a big chore. So I think like the biggest thing of like the CSAs are great, but that it's like you almost like I got in the system of like once I got it, I would kind of like go through it and I would make a plan for every single thing.
Oh, okay.
So I was like, okay, this is how I'm going to use all this stuff this week. I would plan my meals and plan, how I was going to cook everything and try to use every single part of it, which is like, that was a lot of work, but I mean, I was unemployed. So like I had the time, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I have a friend named Sarah who gets CSA boxes, and once in a while she'll like text me. So I got this big box of mushrooms. Like, what should I do? Or I got 12 rutabagas. Like, what should I do? And so I'm always like, I'm here for developing a plan for them so that they don't go to waste.
Right. And so I think it's one of those things when you have a CSA, that's the best way to handle it. But the same vision of like when you're going to a farmer's market, if you can have an idea in your head, like if I'm like cooking a dinner at home, like usually it's like I figure out what protein I want to cook first, and then I go buy vegetables.
Right.
If I go to the grocery store with no plan, I'm going to the meat and fish counter first. I'm figuring out what my protein is, and then I'm going back to the veg section and getting whatever I want to go around it that makes sense. Right. So I think like if you approach the farmer's market with the same way of like, oh, I'm going to cook salmon tonight. So what do I want to go with that? And like saying that to these guys, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
These women, and like, they know, they all cook.
Yeah.
And they all talk to chefs. They all know every chef in the city they work in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They are plugged in. They know, you want to know restaurant drama too? You want to know the tea? You want to know the tea of what's going on in your city restaurant wise?
Talk to your farmers.
Farmers market is better than a 2 a.m. bar. Let me tell you, they know what is going on.
That is awesome. So they can give you the gossip, and they can also say, well, this chef likes to pair this with salmon, or this chef likes to pair this with salmon.
Right.
So I think that's a good point that you brought up, because everybody approaches the farmer's market with a different plan. Some people do go there with a plan of what they're looking for. Like this time of year, lettuce is coming in. So I know I'm going to find beautiful, I like red oak lettuce, early season, first couple cuttings of it. This time of year, when I go to the farmer's market, I know I'm looking for red oak lettuce. But besides that, I'm one of those people, and I know people think private chefs, like you write a menu, you get it approved. That's not how my job works. My job works where I can do whatever the fuck I want any given day. So I don't have to get a menu approved by somebody. I just go to the farmer's market, or I go to the produce section during the winter, and I look for inspiration in what the farmers are excited about. And I'm like, ooh, they have young spring peas that are like the little teardrop, teeny tiny shape, that are like very high in sugar, very low in starch, only available for like a very fleeting time at the beginning of spring. Great. Let me get a pint of those, or 2 pints if I can get it. And then that's how I build my menus. So I usually go and I'll do a market walk first and see what really strikes me and what I get inspiration from.
I feel like one of the questions I get a ton from, whether it's like cooks coming up or people randomly, is they're like, well, how do you come up with dishes? At least when I was coming up, I kind of thought that, chefs were just sitting around and they were like, oh, I'll just do this. They're just inventing things in their head constantly and like didn't understand how it's something like anything else. Like the creativity is, it's a skill, and it's one that you have to work on. It's one that you have to maintain. It's one that you have to do a lot to keep going. So, for you, as now you're a personal chef, and so you're doing bespoke menus constantly. So my question to you then is like, one, now in private work, but even, just going back even into your restaurant days, when you're sitting, you're going to like write a menu. Like, what does your creative process look like now? And like, where did it kind of stem from? What did it look like, when you were doing the Bernadette's, we're doing the Roosters and all that stuff?
So in restaurants, it usually started with the chef, like Chef Eric Repair, Chef Marcus Samuelson, telling me what dish needed to change. And yes, we would have a set seasonal change that we did 3 or 4 times a year. And that's always like, okay, there's always going to be a lettuce salad on the menu. So the garnish is going to change. During the winter, it might be green apples, shaved celery root, shaved celery stalks, things like that. And then during the summer, we might get into peaches and we might get into throwing a little bit of basil in there with the peaches and that lettuce mixture. During the spring, we would like probably put some melons and feta in there, something like that. So there were always the seasonal changes. But then, Chef Repair would say, Adrienne, the striped bass tartare has been on the menu for too long and it hasn't changed. Let's look at changing that. Or an entree, we need a new set to go with the halibut. And that would kind of be the push to change a dish there, because again, those were not my restaurants.
Right. So when he would say to you though, hey, Adrienne, the striped bass has been on the menu too long.
And he sounds just like that.
Just like that. It was perfect. What's your first step from there, I guess is my question. Like when he says that to you, you're like, all right, am I, you know what I mean? Like pulling out cookbooks, am I looking at all the menus? What's the first thing I'm looking for? Of like, okay, I want to figure out my protein first and then I'm building the set around it, or I'm figuring out the set and then figuring out what would be the best fish to go with that set based on seasonality. How are you building that out?
I like to go set first, because there's always a protein that's beautiful and gives you some inspiration. But for me, I was thinking about striped bass, crudo, and tartare, and I think of it as kind of a blank canvas. So I'm not going to get as much inspiration from the protein on that aspect. So for me, I like to start with the garnish, the vegetables, the fruit, the whatever's going to go with this protein. And I remember there's a dish that's still on the Le Bernardin menu today that we've talked about, is the mango jicama striped tartare that I did with a mango emulsion. And that started because we had some jicama in the walk-in, and I saw the jicama and I was like, oh my God, I haven't had this in years, since I had it with tahine seasoning and mango from a fruit cart, like, in Chicago or in Miami, like places where you have the Mexican communities that have those fruit carts and they sprinkle it with that acidic, spicy tahine seasoning. I'm like, or, drizzle some Tapatio hot sauce over it. I'm here for it. So that was where the inspiration for that started, was from an ingredient that then dictated the rest. And that's how I kind of approach the farmer's market. I walk into the farmer's market and like, say it's the summertime and I see beautiful eggplant, beautiful tomatoes. I'm like, oh, I want to do a caponata, like a really fresh, chunky, delicious seasonal caponata. You got eggplant, tomato. I'll throw some olives in there, some capers for brininess. Like, that's the kind of thing. So I usually see an ingredient, and then my Rolodex of like dishes and cookbooks I've read over the years, like something will like boom. And I'm like, okay, I got to do that.
So when you're doing that, if you're going to the farmer's market, like let's say you're going to the farmer's market tomorrow and you have, 2 dinners this weekend. Are you like, I mean, because you kind of know what's in already, right? Are you writing a baseline menu before you go, or are you totally blank pages? I'm going to go,
blank page.
And when I get home, I'll write the menus.
100%. I formulate the menu as I'm shopping and walking through the farmer's market, because once I get that idea of what the dish is that I'm going to do, I need to start filling in the other blanks. I need to find the things that are going to complement those eggplant, or like summer squash is coming in right now. Beautiful patty pans, zucchini flowers, blossoms are coming in now. So I'm like, okay, I'll do stuffed squash blossoms tonight. And what am I going to stuff it with? Am I going to do it with like a mousseline of chicken, or am I going to do it with vegetable or fish? And so I'll start walking around the market and filling in those blanks. And what are those blossoms going to go with? Are they going to go on a carpaccio of sliced summer squash? or are they just going to be on the plate? So I start to fill in those blanks as I'm walking through. And then I'll kind of like write a plan when I get there and sift through the ingredients. And if I did over purchase and something doesn't fit the menu, then I'm like, I have to use this tomorrow for XYZ.
Yeah. Right on. And I think
Yeah.
that's like the dream creation, right? Where you're just like walking around, you're picking things. And I think in what you do for most size dinners you're doing, that
Right.
probably works, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
5
If you're doing a
people.
dinner for 100 people, you're not doing that,
No,
obviously. You know what I
100%
mean?
no.
Like you're planning that dinner menu out 3 months ahead of time. And,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like to all the things.
100%.
But I think for me, it's like, in the restaurant, it's like, so it comes in like waves. Like we usually have a menu meeting like 6 weeks out before like we think we're going to start rolling changes for a season. Okay. And before I sit down in that menu meeting, I will make a list of just every ingredient that's coming in season. So I'll just write a list, you know what I mean, in my notebook. It'll be, and I'm like a pen and paper person. Like I have to have like a hard copy of it, like it just works.
Yeah, we're
better for me.
tactile people. Chefs are very tactile people. I get that.
Yeah, I just am. I really like it. Some of my chefs, they do it on their phone, but for me, it's like, I have to like write it physically down. And I'll just make a list. So for like spring, I'm like, okay, asparagus, peas, I write down every variety of pea tendrils. I'll be like, ramps, spring onions, all the stuff. And I'll just make my list. And then I'll start kind of going through old cookbooks, and I'll be like, all right. And I like when I go through cookbooks, sometimes I'll make notes in them or I'll just dog ear them. And like, I'll see a recipe that it's like, oh, I marked, a year ago being like, oh, this will be good for spring. And there might be some just component of that dish I really liked. Or maybe it's like a lot of times too, it's just like, I like the way they plated it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, aesthetically, I really like this. I'll make all those notes. Sometimes I'll have some rough ideas of dishes where I'm like, okay, I'd really like to try something like this at Rosemary right now. And then I'll have my menu meeting with my chefs. And so I'll sit with my chefs and they'll all do the same thing. And then we'll sit down and we'll go through, we'll all take a printed hard copy of the menu again. And we go through dish by dish and by what needs to change. Because, the seasonality of whatever, like, coming into spring, it's like, all right, sweet potatoes are about to go. Like,
right.
That's, number one, we got to get sweet potatoes off the menu. We got to get the, all the squashes off the menu, the delicatas and the acorn, because they're all getting starchy and all that.
All the hard squashes, yeah.
Right. So we start there of like, what's the necessity of like that has to change based on the seasonality, because those are going to be our first changes. And then from there going into, well, what do we want to change with the season, right? Like what pastas are we going to reset the sets because now we have, ramps coming in and we have morels and we have spring onions and we have all these things. So we kind of go from those places and we start there. And then from there, it's going, and for us, it's a, the conversation with the farmers starts way before the farmers market. Because then it's my sous chefs emailing all the farmers saying, hey, we're going to be looking for, green asparagus, purple asparagus, ramps, and spring onions. When do you think those are going to start hitting? Because it changes every year. Around when it hits.
Yeah, that's true. But is it going to be early May or late May?
Right. But it's a moving target. You know what I mean? It could be
Yeah.
April 1st to May 15th on some stuff. So it's like, that's where the conversation starts. We're like, okay, when is that coming in? And then so we can do our work on the back end of like, I don't want to miss a week of ramps because I'm not ready for them.
Right.
I want to know when he says, or she says like next week we're going to have ramps. It's like, well, we're dialed. We're ready for ramps. That dish is costed. That dish is ready. That dish is, all set up to go. And, would usually like with ramps, it's hard because like you can't get ramps to test with early.
Yeah.
Where it's like other ingredients, like favas and peas and stuff like that. We'll just get like, ones from that are getting shipped in that just aren't going to be as good.
Right.
And we can at least get the right weight. We can get the right visual. And we just know like this will taste a little bit better.
Yeah.
This is going to taste better.
But at least you have something to play with.
Right. Where it's like we can write recipes. We can do cost out. We can, know what we need. So we kind of set up all those dishes ahead of time. So that when we start hitting, we're ready to go. It's like, hey, Nichols said that they will have peas Wednesday next week, but then also having the conversation with them of, okay, you're going to have them Wednesday. How long will you have them for?
Right, right.
Because
How
that's
long
the
will they be here for?
other end of it.
Yeah.
Is like, you need to know, like when we're talking 6 weeks out on stuff, it's like, we need to know what our window is. The way we like to do things, you're saying like Liberta Dead, you did, those 3 big changes a year, 4 big changes a year. And at Spiaggia, it was more of that. At, a rosemary, a carciofo, a tutto, it's a much more fluid change. So it's like, I don't want to not run a dish only because we can run it for 3 weeks.
Right.
So if we got 3 weeks of ramps, we're going hard 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure we get that full 3 weeks though. But also, as that dish goes on, you need to know what you're going to replace it with.
Right, exactly. You have to have a plan in place. So it's not like, oh, we're not getting them tomorrow. What are we doing? Who knows?
Right. It doesn't, you can't just like work it. I mean, you can work it like that, but that's not how we work it, at least.
Yeah, you can work it like that if you have a 20-seat restaurant, maybe. If you've got a larger restaurant, you can be nimble, but you have to have a plan set so that, like you said, that change comes instantly when you're ready for it, as opposed to like trying to figure out what you're going to do in the moment.
Right. So it's nice, like once we finally, like now that we're into farmers market season, where we can physically go there. It's like you go on a Wednesday and that ability to get a little bit of something that's not quite in yet, bring it back and, bring it to my chefs and be like, hey, look, these are coming up. Like, why don't we work on this with this? Or one of them will be like, oh, I wanted to do this, we just pulled some copa down and I wanted to do a copa crostino with English peas and whipped ricotta. It's like, okay, cool. Let's try that today and tomorrow. Let's try to get that dish sorted, and then we'll go live with that next Thursday when we know Wednesday we can get a big delivery. So it's like we have to there's so much foresight that has to go into it to be able to change fluidly at a big restaurant that's really busy. So it's like, it's a ton of setup and organization to go into it. But I think, it's like that's, there's so much of behind the scenes that people don't see, right?
Yeah, and that's the cool thing about it. It's, there's so much to it, especially like for restaurants, the quantity that you have to get, the amount of planning that goes into it to be able to make these seasonal changes. Like, you're planning for the summer in the spring, you're planning for the spring in the winter. So this time of year, some of my favorite things that are coming in now are like jumbo French white asparagus. These things are massive. It's like they bury them so they never develop the green color from chlorophyll. So they're white, super white asparagus, and they can be an inch thick in diameter or 3/4 of an inch, but they're pretty big. But what I'm most excited about doing whenever the spring comes in is getting like green pencil asparagus. It's less expensive, one, and it's a little more forgiving. You don't have to peel it as much either. It's like less labor intensive. But I love taking puff pastry, smear it with creme fraiche, and then I'll par cook my asparagus or peas or whatever the seasonal produce is, and I'll just arrange it on top of the creme fraiche puff pastry, sprinkle everything with salt and pepper. Maybe if I'm feeling real froggy, I'll grate a little Parmesan or like Gruyere over the top and just let that kind of like bake in the oven.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the beauty of getting really great vegetables, and then it's at Rosemary where you have the charcoal hearth where it's like we're able to like right now it's like having an asparagus dish where it's like green and purple asparagus and you just you grill it really hard over the coals and then you toss it in beef fat and then just like over Parmesan
that
fondue,
sounds so good.
Pickled spring onions, and it's simple but it's beautiful. But it's funny how much people are like, oh, how did you come up with this crazy thing? And it's like, well, we've been working on it really hard. We read a ton. And I think people don't realize we do a ton of a big thing with my chefs is teaching them how to research, especially at Carciofo where we're doing something that's so specific where we're doing a Roman restaurant. Right. So it's I buy tons of cookbooks, obviously. But it's reading Italian cookbooks, reading food about Rome, but it's also just reading about Rome, looking for ancient Roman recipes we can riff off of. We do a ton of and talking to my chefs about building time into their weeks, into their days of hey, when are you just going to sit down and read? When are you going to sit down and put the cookbooks out and like go through the cookbooks and like pull up your laptop and read through some things and like take some notes, like get a coffee, find the first 20 minutes in your day and just go read, go research.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's such an important part of the creative process that I think just doesn't get enough airtime. It doesn't get enough daylight of like, people think that it's just like, oh, you just, you know, you saw this at another restaurant you worked at, so you did it. But it's like, speaking of Le Bernardin, you go to Le Bernardin, and the library at Le Bernardin is spectacular.
It's cute. And there's books in so many other places because they can't even fit them all there.
Right. And this is one of the greatest restaurants in the world we're talking about in Le Bernardin, right? And it shows you, to me at least, as an outsider walking in, I was like, this is the attention to continued learning, to a restaurant that's been around so long because it's continued to evolve and continued to stay good and stay at the top of its game, because like they're obviously prioritizing continued learning.
Yes,
and continue
big time.
to read and research and do all these things. And I just think chefs don't talk about it enough.
That is so true. And people ask like, oh, how did you come up with this? How did you come up with this? Because if you read enough, if you're observing things going on around you in like books and in not just cookbooks, but like you said, read about that place and that time, read about that ingredient. You know, it's so cool because then you just have all this information filed away. And then when you're walking through the farmers markets, you're like, I'm going to take this and and then that's how you come up with these concepts for these dishes, because you have a wealth of information in the back of your head that it connects with when you see these ingredients. But if you don't do the reading and put in the work, you're not going to have that, you know, that
we constantly
stuff to reach back to.
It's like build the Rolodex, build the Rolodex, build the Rolodex. You know, write dishes and put food up. Like, I think that's the biggest thing for like young sous chefs coming up. It's like, just put food up. And if it's not there, that's okay. We can work through it. But if you don't put anything up, we have nothing to work on.
Exactly.
So it's like, even if your dish is 30% of the way there, put it up.
Yeah.
Put it up. Let's talk about the 70% that's missing. And sometimes there's a lot of dishes where my chefs, they'll put them up and it's like, hey, like this doesn't work right now. Or maybe this just doesn't work here. Like, this is a good dish. It makes sense,
but
whatever.
It doesn't make sense for this restaurant.
Right. But like, you know, like you can't do poached white asparagus with hollandaise and a poached egg at, you know what I mean, rosemary or carciofa.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't do it. It wouldn't make sense on the restaurant menu, no matter how good it is. Right. It could be the best version of that. Like, hey, this is a good dish. However, this and this and this. So I think like that's such an important part of them, of like, you know, going from like learning the backbones of the creative process to how to edit.
Yeah.
To, you know what I mean? Like what works when. And I think like it's such a process, and it's one of those things that I'm always working to try to demystify.
Yeah. It's a muscle that you have to work. It's not, you have to develop it, and you have to develop it by feeding the muscles with information. That's what comes to it. And then doing it, just going for it, just doing it, just trying something, because you can come up with a concept in your head, but once you put it on a plate, does it work? And you don't know necessarily until you try everything together. So Joe, there is a conversation that we started a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about tech in restaurants, right? Because there is so much technology in restaurants now with the reservation wars, with everything. So we got some comments and we got some DMs from listeners, and something that people talked about that we didn't really touch on, but I know is something you are super passionate about, is phone calls.
You know, that's one of my things. And it's one of those things now that I think it's become, you know, more difficult. And I think it's a weird balance where it's like you see some places that have just, you know, just don't answer the phone at all anymore. That makes it tremendously difficult. And for me, I feel like every time the phone rings, you know what I mean? I'm like, we got to pick it up, because I feel like if I pick up the phone, I make money. Right. It's normally, you know, I feel like the majority of the time it's somebody who wants to get a reservation. They can't figure it out online. They don't see the time, the date they want.
And most people want to call and like call the restaurant. Like most people do not want to actually interface with their phone or computer all the time.
It's all the little ones where it's like, they just have a question. Oh, I want this reservation for this time. And it's like with the online platforms for reservations, sometimes it's hard because you can't just make it unlimited reservations, right? There's all these rules and regulations to it. And so maybe they can't get exactly what they want, but if they could talk to someone, we can get them pretty darn close, right? And we're going to still keep that reso.
Right, exactly. You get that person to your restaurant no matter what. And I know you talked about, AI last time. And I think the phone service, like that's one way that I'm really seeing some good AI come into use.
Yeah, I think that's one where it's like I can really wrap my head around because it picks up efficiencies for you.
Mm.
I think it's like a good enhance, right? And I mean, and that's our whole battle at restaurants, right? That's the whole battle of hospitality of like, how do we make this a little bit better every day? The phone system one, I think like makes sense to me because for me, it's like the biggest thing. It's like if I can have the guarantee that no matter what, if you call, you're going to get response.
Right.
Half the battle is, getting someone to walk through that door, getting someone to pick up that phone, getting someone to click on your website, right? So if I've already won the fight of I'm in your head, you know me, you know my brand, you know the restaurant, you want to come there. So I've already won the toughest battle, right? I got you to notice me.
Right, the awareness.
Right. So if once I get that, I want to make sure that you do not now slip through my hands,
Right.
because you know what I mean? I got 20 other things going on. And I think it's like, especially like the during service hours, right? You've worked a lot of different busy services and you have a busy host stand. There's people waiting to be seated. There's a lot of things going on and the phone's ringing off the hook.
Right. Yes.
So it's always that awkward pause of that for that person at the host stand of like, okay, so I have a guest right in front of my face, but I also have a phone ringing right in front of my face.
Right.
So do I have to hold this guest in front of me
to answer the phone?
To answer this phone? And I'm
right.
Like, we have to answer the phone. So I think having the ability of where that phone call still is captured to go somewhere is super, super helpful and keeps and retains that guest.
Hell yeah. And that's so important because like at La Bernardin, we had 3 to 5 people on any given shift dedicated to only answering phones. But most restaurants can't afford that, or they're not big enough. They don't have the infrastructure to pay somebody just to be dedicated to phones. Like you got time to lean, you got time to clean.
Most restaurants don't even have an office to put them in.
Right. Exactly.
You know what I mean? There's not,
so your
like
host
those old
is
restaurants
doing other stuff.
Were built for reservation offices. You know what I mean? The Le Bernardin's, Spiaggia's, like there was a reservationist office.
There's some really interesting information that I found because there's a company, I think you told me about them, called Slang AI, and that's the phone answering service. So somebody sent us like a link and we got some information. Do you know why most guests call restaurants?
I would have to assume it's reservations, right?
Yes. With all, like, we talk about the reservation wars, but the majority of people still call restaurants to make a reservation. Isn't that wild?
Yeah. And it's still, people reach out all the time of like, oh, I could just call the restaurant too. I could just call the restaurant too. And it always gives you that like, oh God, I hope someone answers. You know what I mean? Because I don't know. I think it's like they say something, there's some rate out there where it's like, it's like restaurants miss like 25% of the calls that come in, which I think is wildly low because I got to imagine there's some out there where it's 100%. And, in my mind, I'm like, if we're only missing a quarter, I think like we're in really, really good shape. So I think giving you the ability to know that like if somebody is making the effort that you have the ability to capture them when it's just like, it's like we talk about reservation wars and all these things, but really it's every day. It's just a battle on butts and seats.
Right.
That is the great fight of the restaurateur. We are fighting the butts in seat battle.
You have a butt. I want it in this seat in this restaurant.
That's it. I got seats for a reason to put butts in them. You know what I mean? Yes. I didn't get these seats to not put butts in them. So it's like anything you could do. We've talked about this on the level of like, like this is why, all these chefs, they do TV, they do all these things. It's all just another brick in the house of the butts of seats.
Right.
And so like, that's where I'm always focused on. So I think, when we look at AI and we look at like what it could add, I think there is, you know what I mean? These are the things where I think like there are the good arguments for. If they could answer the phone and make sure that that guest that wants to come to my restaurant can come to my restaurant.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, there's so many factors of it. Like if I want to book a PDR, a private dining room at a restaurant, I'm calling. And if nobody's picking up and facilitating it, and it's not like the old, bank where it's like, press 1 for a deposit, press 2 for
Right.
hours, press 3 for dress code. It's interactive. Like so I was like going down a rabbit hole because, I like to spin out on stuff. So I didn't realize this, but for Sling AI, they actually have a feature where they link directly to OpenTable. So your reservations can get booked and you say, okay, I want a reservation at 7:30. I'm sorry, Adrienne, 7:30 is not available, but we can do 6:45 or 7:45 or 8:15. Let me know what you'd like. It's like, whoa. So this is like next level where I was a little reluctant too, but this stuff is really helping. And I think the restaurants that have taken advantage of it are probably benefiting because most people call restaurants to book events, get info for a buyout, get a reservation for whatever time, for whatever size of party. And so that's all translating to money.
We can use this, systems like Slang AI to accentuate what we do on the daily, to add to the hospitality. Like it's not going to give you a 1-for-1 swap, right? We'll never get that. We're still in the business of people. But I think, much like when we look at technology in our physical cooking, it's not always the better option, but if it helps you, build those layers of flavor, add to the dish, that it works sometimes, right? And I think it's the same idea where it's like, if this adds to the hospitality, if it adds to the guests' end user experience, where it makes it easier, more seamless, less barriers of entry to just get them through your door, like then it's something that's going to make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I love that. And Joe, I know the last time we talked about tech in restaurants, I think I called you a dinosaur. But it sounds like you might have a foot in the new world, in the 21st century finally. We've made you a believer.
Hey, when it's guest facing, if it's something that, helps me arm myself deeper for the war and getting more butts and seats, getting more people through my doors, and, especially when you have someone who wants to be there, who has discovered you already, then I am all for whatever I could do to try to keep that person locked in with me.
That's why you were nominated for Restaurateur, for Outstanding Restaurateur this year, because you are hospitality minded and you keep your guest experience first. And I love that. And I think we found a new way to help get some more butts and seats at all of your 4 restaurants. I think it's time to go to the walk-in.
Feels like about that time in the day.
It does.
And
Who's
I
up this week?
believe it is your turn to take a trip
shiza.
in. Grab a milk crate. Pour a beer into a quart container and spill the beans.
We started this conversation today with the farmer's market. So I think I'll take it back to the farmer's market for my walk-in confession. And this is something that had to do with the farmer's market because I was doing a cooking demo at the farmer's market in the Bronx a few years ago. I was a junior sous chef at La Bernardin. And so I was doing it on my day off, right? I had a Saturday off and I'm going to go cook and do a demo for 200 people at a farmer's market. But it was with City Harvest, a charity in New York that rescues food and provides it for shelters.
Was this your first demo?
It was my first demo. It was baby's first demo ever.
First demo.
It was so exciting. And I was so nervous, right? And everybody at the restaurant's busy. So nobody's helping me. I have to prep. And the food item that City Harvest had for this demo was cabbage. So cabbage had to be the star of it. So I didn't want to do a heavy coleslaw, but I wanted to do a light, cabbage salad coleslaw, but more salady. So I have to shred and cut copious amounts of cabbage. So I'm on my 5th out of 25 heads of cabbage, right? I'm rolling. What do you normally do when you have something round like cabbage? You cut the bottom off and you give yourself a flat surface so it doesn't roll on you.
Yeah.
I start thinking about how many more cabbage I have to go through. And my dumbass doesn't level out this one cabbage. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to shave 10 seconds off of each of these by not leveling. I'm just going to hold it and cut it in half. And that'll be my flat surface. Bad idea.
Yeah.
So I go to cut the cabbage in half. I'm holding it with my left hand like this. I'm cutting it. I got the knife in on top. What does a cabbage do? What does anything round do? It rolls. It rolls. I rocked and it rolled. And that knife dislodged from the cabbage and lodged into the back of my hand. It was so stuck in my hand. I still have a scar from it today that goes across like 2 finger bones here. It was so lodged in my hand. I had to like just pause for a second and then just like pull it out of my hand. And I'm like, oh God. And I just left the cabbage with the knife in it on my cutting board, ran down to where the first aid kit was. And I still have cabbage to prep after this. So I put a bandage on. I saran wrapped my hand. I put a glove on. My hand is throbbing, Joe.
Yeah,
it is
just like
that blood pulsing was just like, oh.
You feel the glove filling up with blood too, and you're just like,
kind of. It was just soaking through everything. I think like I had to change it 20 minutes later, and I just like stacked paper towels on top of it and rewrapped it with kitchen tape
just
and
the way
then
they teach you
saran
in
wrap.
med school.
Oh yeah, 100%. And then I still had to finish my prep, and I still had to go to the farmer's market the next day to do this demo. And I was at the farmer's market, like serving everything one-handed.
Yeah.
And they were like,
with your right hand, like,
right. They're like, chef, can you demo how to cut the cabbage? I was like, no,
I cannot.
I was like, but I will tell you the first most important thing: give yourself a flat surface.
Yeah,
cut off
you're
the
like,
bottom.
cut the bottom off. Cut the bottom off. Also, you're working at La Bernadette because anybody else who heard this story who worked at like a regular restaurant was like, why didn't you just send it all through the Roboco?
Oh God. Oh no.
To make coleslaw, but you're hand cutting.
Do you put mushroom for duxelle in the Roboku? Yeah, now I do actually. So
yeah, I was like, yeah, send it.
But yeah,
Also, I'm not making duxelle. But like, like I'm not serving Wellington. But like that's the most insane part of that story to me is you're like, I'm gonna hand cut cabbage.
Yeah.
Like not even mandolin.
No, hand cut.
Like that's,
it wasn't.
That's
I think I was doing like
and a half.
It was.
Is that you're like,
I was
I
doing
need to
like
hand cut this because like everyone's gonna know if I don't.
Oh yeah, they're gonna totally respect me more for having hand cut all this.
Right. They're like, then I'm a
gives
serious chef if I hand cut all this cabbage, as opposed to just like I could have cut the end off it, put it on a slicer, and be like, zoop, zoop,
Right.
zoop, zoop, like, and enjoyed my Saturday.
I was working hard, not smart.
That is.
What can I say?
That's
I didn't know what I didn't know.
Dude, that's some top tier, like where it's like, and you know how many people like walked by you and were just like, you know what I mean? Like people have been in that kitchen probably 20 years, just like, what is she doing?
Yeah. Fast forward like years later, I got one of those peelers, a serrated peeler, the julienne peeler. So now cabbage, I'm just like, done.
So you use a julienne peeler on a cabbage?
Oh my God, yeah, I got one in France because they do all those salads.
I'm gonna need a video of this. I've never seen it.
Oh,
you're gonna have to.
They're very popular in France and Southeast Asia because there's a lot of shredded vegetable dishes. I learned this at Red Rooster because there was a cook who had one, and I was so judgy. I looked at her and I was like, "You're not cutting that by hand?" And she was like, "No, chef, this is how we do it."
Cut your hand off. Cut your hand off if you're serious.
And she was like, "No, chef, this is how we do it." And there was one who was Jamaican, and then there was another woman who was Vietnamese, I believe. And they were both like, no, this is how we do it. I was like, boy, I wish I had worked here before.
Yeah.
And learned this before.
That's a
sacrifice. I still have like this crazy scar on the back of my hand from it. It goes all the way from my middle finger to my thumb.
This is how we learn. This is how we learn, by putting knives in the back of our hands. And being like, perhaps there was a better way.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, that was. I'm glad you've learned, Adrienne. I'm glad we've grown. I feel like we've all grown from this.
Yes. We all know the moral of the story. Give yourself a flat surface and find a better way.
Yeah, use a Roboco.
That's it for this episode of The Chef's Cut. Be sure to subscribe wherever you're listening, especially if you're watching us on YouTube, where you can find full-length videos of every episode. And follow us at The Chef's Cut Pod on IG. For Joe Flamm, I'm Adrienne Cheatham, and this has been The Chef's Cut, Life Beyond the Pass.